The unexamined life is not worth living. This is a quote by Socrates. And what does it mean? What if the greatest philosopher of all time was right? And most of us are still living that unexamined life. We have hidden patterns, blind spots, and untapped potential waiting right under the surface. In this series on the psychology of self-awareness, we are finally turning the light inward, ready to examine yours. Because once you start, there's no going back to who you thought you were. There's a moment in life, and maybe you have felt it, where everything goes quiet for a second. Not because the world stopped, but because you did. You look around at your life, your habits, your reactions, your patterns, and something inside you whispers, "Is this really me? Oh, have I just been moving?" Most people never pause long enough to ask that question. They wake up, they go to work, they react, they repeat, they survive. But they don't see themselves. They don't understand themselves. They don't question themselves. And that's why this series exists. Now, welcome back to JengaPod. I'm your host, Godwin Silayo. This time, we are going to examine our lives. We're embarking on a series called Know Yourself, a journey into the psychology of self-awareness, a journey into the understanding the person behind your decisions, your emotions, your habits, and your life. A journey into the part of you that you have ignored, avoided, or simply never learned how to meet. Because before you change your life, you have to understand the person living it. And let me tell you something from the start. Self-awareness is not soft, it's not abstract, it's not optional. It's the foundation of emotional intelligence, it's the foundation of maturity, it is the foundation of growth. And according to an article written by Dr. Laura Delizona from Harvard Business Publishing, self-awareness is the first step in breaking what she calls the ladder of inference, the mental shortcut where we jump from observation to assumption to conclusion without ever questioning our thinking. In other words, most people don't really respond to reality. They respond to the story. They tell themselves about reality. And that story, it's often outdated, unexamined, inherited, or built on fear. This episode is about waking up from that story. This episode is about awareness, the awareness that shakes you a little, the kind that makes you sit up straighter, the kind that makes you realize you've been living but you haven't been paying attention. So today, we are going to talk about what self-awareness actually is, why is it so rare, why it matters more than you think, the psychology traps that keep you unconscious, the philosophical wisdom that has guided humanity for centuries, and the first steps to finally seeing yourself clearly. And listen, if this episode is speaking to you right now, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps more people discover JengaPod. And remember, you can always listen to this series on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Amazon Music. Now, let's begin. So let's dive deeper, because self-awareness is not just a concept. It's a confrontation, a mirror, a moment where you finally stop running from yourself. And to understand it, we need to start with a story. Let me give you a story of a man who did not know himself. There was once a man, let's call him Danny. Danny was successful on paper, good job, good income, good reputation. People looked at him and said, he's doing quite well. But inside, he felt disconnected, restless, like he was always living someone else's life. One day, he snapped at a coworker over something small, something tiny, something that didn't matter. And afterward, he sat in his car and asked himself a question he had avoided for years. Why did I react like that? Not what happened, not who was wrong, not why did they annoy me, but why did I react like that? That question changed everything, because for the first time, Danny wasn't blaming, he was not defending, he was not explaining, he was observing. And that's the beginning of self-awareness. No judgment, not shame, not guilt, just observation. Now, before we continue, let me give you a gentle reminder. If this is speaking to you, pause for a second and like this episode. It helps more people find JengaPod, and it tells the algorithm that this message matters. And if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, hit a follow so you never miss an episode. Alright, let's keep going. So let's ask ourselves what self-awareness really means. Self-awareness is the ability to step outside yourself and watch your mind like a movie, to see your thoughts without becoming them, to feel your emotions without drowning in them, to notice your patterns without being controlled by them. It's the moment you say, why do I always shut down when someone disagrees with me? Why do I get defensive when I feel insecure? Why do I keep choosing the same kind of relationships? Why do I avoid difficult conversations? Why do I keep repeating this cycle? Self-awareness is not about fixing yourself. It's about seeing yourself, because you cannot change what you refuse to see. Now let's look at something different, the ladder of inference, why you react without thinking. Let's bring in a psychology truth, one that explains why you react the way you do. In an article written by Dr. Laura Delizona for Harvard Business Publishing, she explains something called the ladder of inference. It's a mental ladder your brain climbs in seconds. 1. You observe something. 2. You select certain details. 3. You add meaning. 4. You make assumptions. 5. You draw conclusions. And 6. You take action. All this happens so fast you don't even realize it. Someone doesn't text you back. You assume they're ignoring you. You conclude they don't care. You get upset. You withdraw. But none of that was a reality. It was a story your mind created. Self-awareness interrupts that story. It slows you down. It helps you question your assumptions before they become your reactions. It helps you say, wait, is this true? Or is this just my interpretation? That one question can save relationships, it can save opportunities, and it can save your peace. Another question that we're going to ask ourselves, why self-awareness is so rare? Let's be honest, self-awareness is uncomfortable. It forces you to confront your blind spots, your insecurities, your patterns, your wounds, your ego. It forces you to admit, I might be the problem sometimes. And that is hard. It's easier to blame others. It's easier to stay busy. It's easier to distract yourself. It's easier to keep moving than to sit with yourself. But here's the truth. You cannot grow beyond the level of your self-awareness. You cannot fix what you will not face. You cannot heal what you won't acknowledge. You cannot change what you won't confront. Self-awareness is the doorway to every transformation you want. Now let's look at the ancient wisdom, know thyself. Thousands of years ago, the temple of Apollo at Delphi had 3 words carved into its stone, know thyself. Socrates believed that self-knowledge was the highest form of wisdom. Not knowledge of the world, not knowledge of others, knowledge of yourself. Because if you don't understand your own mind, your own desires, your own fears, your own patterns, then you are not living in your life. You're living your conditioning. You're living your past, your trauma, your habits, your assumptions, your unexamined belief. Self-awareness is how you reclaim your life from all of that. Again, self-awareness is how you reclaim your life from all of that. Now, before we go deeper, again, let me just remind you a little bit. If this is speaking to you, pause for a second and like this episode. It helps more people find JengaPod, and it tells the algorithm that this message matters. And if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or even Amazon Music, hit a follow so you never miss an episode. Alright, let's keep going. Now let's look at a modern day example. The creator who kept burning out. Let me give you a modern example. A young creator, let's call her Maya, kept burning out of every few months. She would start strong, full of energy, full of ideas, and then crash. She thought she had a discipline problem. She thought she needed better habits. She thought she needed more motivation. But when she finally slowed down and became honest with herself, she realized something deeper. She was not creating from passion. She was creating from insecurity. She wasn't trying to express herself. She was trying to prove herself. Every project was a performance. Every post was a plea for validation. Every achievement was a bandage for a wound she never addressed. Her burnout wasn't a productivity issue. It was a self-awareness issue. Once she understood that, everything changed. Because when you understand the why behind your behavior, the how becomes easy. Now let's look at the psychological facts we need to hear. So let's ground this in the research. 95% of people believe they are self-aware. Only 10 to 15% actually are. People with higher self-awareness have better relationships, better decision-making, and higher emotional intelligence. Self-awareness reduces stress because you stop reacting and start responding. People who lack self-awareness repeat the same mistakes, not because they are incapable, but because they are unconscious. Self-awareness is not a personality trait. It's a skill, and like any skill, it can be developed. Now let's look at the wake-up call. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. When was the last time you questioned your own thinking? Not your goals, not your dreams, not your plans, your thinking. Because your thinking is the root of everything else. Your thought shapes your emotions shape your actions shape your habits shape your identity, and your identity shapes your life. If you don't understand your thoughts, you don't understand your life. Now this episode is your invitation to stop living unconsciously, to stop reacting, to stop repeating, to stop sleepwalking through your own existence. This is your moment to wake up. So to conclude, take a breath with me, because everything we have talked about today, the stories, the psychology, the philosophy, the examples, they all point to one truth. Self-awareness is the beginning of every transformation you want in your life. Not motivation, not discipline, not strategy, not goals. Awareness. Because you cannot change what you cannot see. You cannot grow beyond what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot build a new life with the same old patterns. And today, you saw something. Maybe for the first time in a long time. You saw the gap between who you are and who you have been acting like. You saw the difference between your reactions and your reality. You saw the stories your mind has been telling you and the truth underneath them. That is not a small thing. That is not a soft thing. That is not a nice to have. That is the beginning of a new life. Now let me give you a quick summary of what we talked about. Today you learned that most people live unconsciously. That self-awareness is the ability to observe your thoughts, not drown in them. That your mind climbs the ladder of inference in seconds. That your reactions are often stories, not facts. That ancient wisdom, know thyself, is still the foundation of modern psychology. That your patterns are not random, they are messages. And that awareness is the first step toward freedom. You learn that you are not stuck as well. You are simply unaware, and awareness is something you can build. So here's your call to action. I'm going to give you a JengaPod challenge for the next 24 hours. Catch yourself once, just once. Catch one reaction, one assumption, one emotional spike, one moment where you normally go on autopilot. And instead of reacting, pause. Ask yourself, is this true? Is this just my interpretation? That one question can change the direction of your day and eventually your life. Because self-awareness does not start with breakthrough. Starts with a pause. Now, if this episode is speaking to you or spoke to you, if it made you think, reflect, or see yourself differently, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That helps more people discover our channel, JengaPod, and join this journey for intentional living. Remember, you can also listen to this series on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Wherever you go, we go with you. This is JengaPod, and I'm your host, Godwin Silayo. Let's keep stacking, let's keep building, and let's keep on rising. I'll see you in our second episode. Thank you so much for listening, and see you soon.